I would argue that anytime that you can take a $2 billion investment, turn into $7 billion in equity that'll likely be worth 3, 4, 5 times that in the next couple of years, I would call that a savvy business move.
Okay, so I'm not going to suggest it's not a savvy business move.
Yep.
The larger question for U.S. companies, multinationals, CEOs who are watching this morning and others, can you do business in China?
It's a really good question. So at least if you look at it from a tech standpoint, on one hand, Travis certainly got further than anyone ever has, right? 150 million rides, now owns 20% of Didi. But he is also, in my experience, and I work with lots and lots of tech CEOs, the most aggressive, the most savvy of anyone that I've ever dealt with. So I would look at it this way. If you are a sharing economy company and you are integrated into the local economy, so local drivers, local hosts, everything like that, then how the local culture works, local laws, local regulations are really important. Much, much harder. If you're a hardware manufacturer, if you're a B2B company and you're selling enterprise software, something like that, I think it matters less. So if I were looking at it, it really depends on the kind of business you're in.
Long-term policy. Here's a policy question for you. As the segment just before you was about Amazon and Facebook and Google. And now we're talking about Uber-Didi. And there's an argument to be made. All of these businesses are ultimately, and it's what Peter Thiel said about a great business model, is ultimately a monopoly. Long term, do you look at what's going on in China and look at all these businesses and say they will become monopolies? And then the question is that a good thing or a bad thing from a competitive perspective?
It's a great question. Based on the history of business in China, you would think they probably will become monopolies, and I think the Uber-Didi merger is probably a pretty good sign of that. Obviously, the U.S. government has been a lot more aggressive in trying to prevent that. So you didn't mention Microsoft. At one point, in the Clinton administration, the Justice Department was worried that Microsoft was a monopoly, and Joel Klein and David Boyce took that on, and they eventually were able to make Microsoft split up in many ways. So I think it really depends on where the rule of law is being applied in the culture. But yeah, sure. So for example, one of the ramifications of the Uber-Didi deal is Didi had been a major partner of Lyft. Uber is clearly a much better company than Lyft. If I'm Lyft today, I'm worried about that. Does that mean that Uber now has monopoly in the U.S.? Maybe, maybe not. You know, if you run around New York,
because
you see other choices.
When you say this is bad for Lyft, ultimately you think that Didi merges with Uber globally?
No, I just think that if you're Didi, and now you've got a stake in Lyft and a stake in Uber, and you're saying, which bet do I really want to double down on? You're going to double down on Uber. There's no real comparison
What does it say
Uber
about Apple, which has a stake in
it's interesting. I think it was Kara Swisher yesterday talked about basically everyone owns everyone now, So there are so many different people that have ownership in Uber, in Lyft, in Didi. And I think where it gets really interesting is there are 5 companies, and a few other bit players that are working on autonomous vehicles. It's Uber, Apple, Amazon, Tesla, and Google. And now they all own pieces of each other. And at the same time, they're competing with each other on who's going to be first on autonomous, and then they're going to be competing with the OEMs, which are the traditional car manufacturers. So how that all plays out is going to be pretty fascinating.
Hey, CNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Here you're going to find videos packed with all of the information that you need to be smarter about your finances. You can subscribe by clicking right here and click on all the videos around me or the I right here to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.